This is the BBC. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Sales TV. A light-hearted look at what's going on in the world of sales. I was going to say in the UK, but actually around the world, isn't it? You know, we're
global.
We're all part of a global community, aren't we?
Yeah.
The global community of sales. So, hello, everybody, and welcome. We haven't really got an agenda particularly today, I don't think. We did have somebody that we had lined up that might have been a guest, but they couldn't make it in the end. What have we seen in the world of sales and sales methodologies this last week, do we think?
I've got a topic that's come up a couple of times in the last week.
Okay.
Which I'd like to put on the table. The topic is asynchronous selling. And I think
asynchronous selling.
Asynchronous selling.
Okay.
Selling, which I think I understand to mean the ability to sell in lots of places at different times without having to actually be there yourself in person. So I think this topic's come up a couple of times in the last week because when we think about how buyer behavior has been changing, I think more so in the last couple of years as buyers spend more time thinking about what their problems are and how to solve them behind closed doors. And then we have the added complexity with multiple stakeholders and multiple hoops that buyers have to jump through. Sellers are getting less and less time in front of the people that are influencing those decisions. So they're trying to come up with ideas like digital sales rooms or video prospecting and, trying to get their message across to those stakeholders, when they're not necessarily on a predefined call or in a predefined meeting with them. And so, yeah, I just wanted to table that as a topic. I think it's quite an interesting one.
It is. I was originally confused because I thought it was about a bunch of salespeople getting into swimming costumes and doing that.
When
you said asynchronous selling, it's like I was going to a completely different place then.
Interestingly, you said asynchronous selling, and I thought you were going to say like a sarcastic comment about a lack of synchronization between the seller and the buyer, and the fact that the seller's interested in selling and the buyer has no interest in buying. But actually, that's what that's what the overwhelming majority of selling looks like. And you said about, we're going to create a buyer room where people can come in or whatever. It's like, since when has a buyer ever been interested in that? Alex, you and I worked at a company together, and we used to do things like customer journey mapping. It had nothing to do with the customer's buying journey. It had everything to do with the seller's selling journey. And that's why these
things make you feel better, though? Did you feel happy? The two of you in the room with a pen?
Well, I'm not sure that I personally felt happy, but I think a lot of people did feel happy because they felt they were doing something around customer centricity and putting the customer first.
Yeah.
But people talk about we want to have a relationship based sale. No, you don't. You want to have a sales relationship based sale. It's got nothing to do with the relationship. It's got everything to do with the money.
Yeah, and I think when digital sales rooms, this is a new term that I'm hearing. I don't think it's that new, but I'm hearing it more and more. Where a vendor or a sales team create this digital room where the buyer can go and consume information that has been created by the seller, with the intention of helping to guide the buyer through their buying journey. But as you say, Adam, it's really more about the seller. Now, I see one of the problems there is every vendor as every vendor starts to do this, whether creating the technology or the software themselves or using a third-party technology, but buyers who are buying multiple solutions to multiple problems are going to find themselves in a position where they're having to log into multiple sales rooms, which kind of defeats the object.
And it's also part of this ongoing thing that salespeople want to see. That we need to scale. So one-to-one meetings aren't enough. So if we can get 20 buyers in a room and basically give them our pitch, they'll all sign. So we've basically cut our sales cycle, and what we've done is that we've increased the number of sales.
Tim, just before we go any further, I think in episode 2 you dished out quite a bit of abuse about me being late. So I thought I was going to be late on the school run because I'm a working dad with a working wife. So this is the new protocol. If you're going to be late, you log on at 7:30. You put your test card up with your reason why you're going to be late. Yeah.
In fact, that is exactly what happened. So before we went live, so Andy was here when we switched on, but before we went live, I logged in, and then I let Alex in, and then the test card popped up for Andy, and it was like, oh, well, he did phone me to say I might be a little bit late, so he had already done his prep for it.
Here's the bizarre thing: it was actually early to be late. Anyway, so actually, with James Ward, a good friend of mine, created something called Client Share, other brands available, about 8 years ago. Don't know if James is on, but exactly to the point, which is how do you create this digital room where you can put information and you can share it with the buying group. I think to your point, though, let's be brutally honest, it's a way of trying to find out who the hell's engaging.
Isn't it? Don't we have this thing called a website? Where buyers can go online and they can check, and look at your products and services. But of course, the problem to the seller is you don't know that they've been on the website. Well, you can kind of track. You can kind of find the IP address that they've come from.
Yeah, you can.
But if you do all of your research while you're staying at a Marriott hotel, as people will know, that they get lots of people looking at their websites from Marriott, not from the company. But really, buy rooms? Is this serious?
A buyer's interested. That's my question. So the problem, as we always say, every piece of sales or brand collateral says the same thing: buy our product because we're better than everyone else. So when I go into the Andy Huff buyer room, it says buy from Andy because Andy's the best. And I go into the Tim Hughes buyer room and it says buy from Tim because Tim's the best. And so actually I'm no better off if I go to all the buyer rooms than if I didn't go to any of the buyer rooms. And what's so beautiful about user-generated content, it's like, when you go to Amazon to decide whether you should buy product A or product B, you read the reviews and people just like you have said this was a good idea or a bad idea, and you base your opinion on that, which is, in quotes, impartial, rather than reading the reviews which says, this is a really solid, high-performing insert product here, as does every other product. Yeah. And I think buyers need to there's no trust, is there? Sellers don't tell the truth, so why would a buyer believe anything a seller says?
I think it's interesting. I love the film. Have you ever seen the Dudley Moore film, Ordinary People, about marketing, where he has this mental breakdown and he's put all of these honest things.
Volvo, boxy but safe.
Yeah, boxy but safe. All brand, tastes awful, but might just save your life. Yeah, and you know what? Wouldn't that be nicely refreshing that we actually told the truth occasionally? Because
yeah,
I do this. I play this game with myself, which is bullshit bingo. Because I drive down the street or I walk down the street and look at all of the marketing that comes at you in static signs. Have you ever found a below average apartment? Everything's a luxury apartment, isn't it?
They're all luxury apartments.
All luxury, super top end apartments. It's like, no, it's about average as an apartment. It's fairly priced average apartment with a half decent view. I'd go and look around that. Because you go, oh, it's quite. Well,
you'd kind of feel obligated to, wouldn't you? But it's so a friend of mine posted something about they had been to one of these buying things. I want to be careful not to use the name. Tim, you probably saw that she'd posted this. Her mobile phone had been disconnected because she was in a dispute with one of these aggregators where you go and you get a list of all of the different mobile phone companies. And increasingly, we're seeing the buyer being driven to make really bad decisions because they're not informed about what it is that they're buying. You know, so because every seller says we're doing the same thing, in this case, mobile phone, every seller says we've got 98% coverage in the UK and international roaming and unlimited data and blah, 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 all of this stuff. This person had just thought, well, actually, because they're all saying the same thing, they're all identical, so it doesn't matter which one I buy. Therefore, I'm going to go and buy this one because it's
cheapest.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you know, it's like my dad, who was an architect, used to say about quantity surveyors. Nothing against quantity surveyors. Used to say they know the price of everything and the value of nothing. And that's the issue, isn't it? You know, people are being led up the garden path, and I don't see the buyer rooms or journey mapping or brochures help actually break down those barriers and help inform people, do they?
Yeah. So I want to bring up Peter Button's comment, because I think you know, I kind of joked a little bit about asynchronous selling, but I do think Peter has a point about asynchronous selling being a skill, and I personally don't see asynchronous selling as any different to what good salespeople have done for many years. It's about you know, thinking about the experience that you're going to give your buyers and that decision-making unit, and how are you going to get yourself, whether in real life or digitally, in front of them to support them, to influence their decision ultimately. But we're at risk, I think, of the digital sales room, you know, for companies, for whoever owns the digital sales room at the vendor, to say, well, we have one of those, so therefore we're doing asynchronous selling. Our entire sales team needs to put A to Z in the digital sales room because that's what we need to do, and that's asynchronous selling, as opposed to the art of actually selling.
Yeah, and I think that often the art of selling is not selling. So here's a couple of interesting facts. Up until about 15 years ago, do you know what the most valuable from sales revenue real estate in the UK was per square foot?
What, like the average value?
No. Where is the most valuable sale? Where was the most valuable sales real estate?
As in retail, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Harrods?
No, it was at major terminus stations in the UK. So Victoria and Euston and places like that. In the last 10 or 15 years, do you know what the most valuable, the highest yield retail space in the UK is? And indeed in the world, in every country, this is the case.
Supermarket?
The Apple Store. And do you know why? So if you go to an Apple Store, you can go in first thing in the morning and you can stay there all day using their products. You don't have to buy anything. Nobody is incentivized to sell you anything. You're just made to feel welcome there, and they're there to help you. And as a result of that, Apple is the most valuable brand in the world now. And I think that you know, the problem is that we think what we need to do, we pay lip service to helping customers. We pay lip service to educating customers. We don't educate customers. We try to back them into a corner and force them to buy something. And that needs to change, because Apple are the greatest example of a company that has said, we're going to turn that on its head. We're not going to incentivize people. We're not going to make customers buy. We're going to just help them until they feel confident buying.
Yeah, I think we're flirting with stuff here, because if you look at Apple on the other side of it, they are brilliant at basically making you want the next product and your old product's obsolete, and doing various things. So, you know, introducing software which slows your product down. So their retail stores might be brilliant, but actually as a company, You know, I'm not sure they're completely squeaky clean on everything that they do. Now, you've got to do that. I was talking to some of the MBA students in Cranfield yesterday. You know, I'm old enough to remember Hoover and some TV brands, and they never broke. So where's Hoover now? Or Hoover almost went bust, and all of those really reliable product sets, basically, or products, that they all went to the wall. You know, because you bought it once and you never needed another one. So, you know, if you look at Apple really cleverly, you always want another one. You always want the latest one, the next one, and the next one.
There's a difference between want and need, isn't there?
And is that about innovation? Because if you think about, you know, if you think about Hoover, Dyson basically came on, and what they did was they out innovated them.
And also, Hoover had the most catastrophically bad marketing campaign, didn't they? Which almost sank them back in the 90s, where they said, buy one of our products and you get a free trip to New York.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously the point of a campaign to sell more of your product is the prize for buying the product must be a lower value than the product itself. But when the product is a lower value than the prize, which it was in Hoover's case, they assumed that they were going to get a 10% take-up rate. And in fact, what happened was people, you know, I want to take my whole family to New York for the weekend, so I'm going to go and buy 4 Hoovers and then just throw them away because it's the cheapest way to buy tickets. So they got a massive uplift in sales, but unfortunately they couldn't afford to fulfill it.
They did redefine the name of a vacuum cleaner.
They did.
Maybe it was all a marketing ploy.
It's funny. So I went into a supermarket, and two things happened. I just wanted a sandwich because I was quite hungry, and a bottle of water because I was quite dehydrated. And took them to the checkout, and the lady, quite a small store, said, "Oh, yeah, you can have a meal deal." So I was being charged £4.19 for these 2 products, and the meal deal. She actually walked me to the bag of crisps. Now, I quite like the fact that she walked me to the bag of crisps, because if you remember B&Q, they used to do a really good job of helping you buy, because they'd take some poor lost soul and walk you to the nail gun, walk you to the hammer. and actually, funnily enough, they don't do that. It's actually, but it did happen to me the other week. But this lady walked me. She got me a bag of crisps and said, if you buy these crisps, you get a meal deal. Walked me back to the till. And then effectively, even going, I don't really want a bag of crisps. This is a bit like McDonald's and Supersize Me. You know, it's like, okay. And she then got me from £4.19 for 2 products to £4 for 3. And I'm sat there going, so you effectively paid me 19 pence to buy that bag of crisps. So I'm sat there now extrapolating it out, going, if I go back today and just buy this bag of crisps and say, but actually, no, you now owe me 19 pence. How long do I have to be at that store before I actually buy a car with the proceeds? You know, but it's just, you know, I get it might work. It's a small store. Get it might work for a really heavy mid-town store or something like that. But it's like, you're paying me 19 pence.
Trade promotions. Trade promotions, Andy.
Yeah, it's like...
It's a classic CPG trade promotion.
Right. But
you lose
money.
As somebody
get them in to buy that, and then they buy something else, you mean?
As somebody once said, you know, £5 for a sandwich, a bag of crisps and a drink, it's neither a meal nor a deal.
No, very true.
You could sell the crisps. Go out front and see if someone wants to buy the crisps.
Give them away.
Give them to a homeless person.
That would be
really... a crisp, and they'll say, I'd rather have the 19p, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that would be interesting, though, Tim, wouldn't it? Is if I actually did that, how many people would actually take them? Because you talk about trust. It's like, here, do you want a bag of crisps? They go, what's wrong?
Yeah, what have you done to them?
Yeah. Where's the catch? There isn't one. But no one, isn't that intrinsically the problem with the human being today in most civilian worlds, is that we just don't trust anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Including, or especially salespeople. Exactly because of the buyer rooms that's just been created by the marketing department.
Who've got a meal deal in there.
So Alex, asynchronous selling, is that what LinkedIn would call multi-threading? where you have you know, in any B2B complex sale, you've got multiple stakeholders.
Yeah.
So you've got to talk to, you know, so you've got to talk to the finance director wants a business case. The users want to see that, you know, you can actually use the product. You've got the person that's actually going to sign off the check, which may be different from the finance director. So it's about talking to all of those different stakeholders.
It is, but I think there's a subtle difference where, and again, this is my interpretation of it. I think multi-threading is quite deliberate. So, who are the stakeholders? What are their names? What can I find out about them?
Right.
What drives them? You know, what do I need to create to specifically put in front of them to influence that purchase decision? And I think the slight difference between asynchronous selling and multi-threading is asynchronous selling is you don't know all of those stakeholders. So you need to be creating something, and you need to be putting it out there in front, you know, roughly in front of those people to increase your chances of getting your message in front of them. And it might be, you know, it might be an online demo. It might be a video where you're educating. It might be a blog or an article or a piece of content, a bit like we do with social selling. But
so we have a supply chain software company as a client, and they have 100 stakeholders in every sale. And of course, you don't know who they are, or you have to go and find them, because they'll say that there will be, you know, you need to talk to Darlene and you need to talk to Jeremy and stuff like that. But ultimately, because of the users and the various, especially in supply chain, there can be different people across manufacturing and different user departments. You know, the number of stakeholders is 100 people.
Yeah, and that is a challenge. that is a challenge.
Well, I think the challenge is the fact that you don't know who some of these people are.
Yeah.
You know, if you know exactly who the 100 people are, it's relatively straightforward. It'll be time consuming, but it's when you don't know who they are, you don't know who those pivotal people are. That's the problem.
But that's the nature of what the chat room is, or all these buyer rooms, like, you know, like James has been doing and whatnot, are about. So actually, I stick it in a room. Adam, you look at it as the CFO, and you send it on to Tim. Now, I didn't know who Tim was before, but now I know that Tim exists, and he's something to do with that buying decision. And then actually, I find that you guys read one article or something that I've put in there, but Alex reads 10. And therefore, my concentration will be on Alex. And that's Matt Dixon's second book, isn't it? Which is The Challenge of Customer. Who's going to be there to argue for you when you're not in the room? And that's the problem, because, you know, and I think this is just brilliant that someone has put in there, is, you know, multiple touch points. Richard's just said that, is the reality about since 2009, the number of people in the decision-making policy and decision-making group is just monumentally high. You know, and you've got no way of being. You can touch them. You can potentially engage with them. As Alex said, it's got to be multiple across everything. But it's going to be really hard to influence them all, because actually what you don't know and you don't get the time is to understand what their drivers and their issues are. So the CFO's driver is going to be very different to the project delivery person's driver. And, you know, procurement's going to be very, very different. You know, procurement actually, bizarrely enough, get involved in a lot, but don't actually have any real power, but you've got to deal with them. It's not their budget, it's the business unit's budget. And many of the time, they're involved in a process that fundamentally they don't understand. So you've got no chance of really understanding them, apart from, and this is where I think sales has got to go, is highly adaptive salespeople who are very good at the human science of understanding different drivers for different people and stakeholders, and actually covering all of those bases off. And it used to happen, you know, late 90s, you had to sell that way. You had to go into an organization and understand what operations were doing and understand how they manufactured stuff. And where did you fit in that process to be able to help that business go quicker? And if you find that out, you were okay.
And I think what's happened is that the number of stakeholders involved in the sale has increased, but also because of the fact that we've spent the last 2 years online and we're now sort of like semi-online. In the past, what we were able to do, we need to find out what a person's personal win is, and the way you do that is you ask somebody in the corridor, so what are you going to get out of this, Andy? And you're not able to have those conversations in corridors. You come onto a Zoom call and it's very official, and so it's more difficult to actually drill down to actually find out what the people want out of the sale.
Yeah, which is why it starts with the individual and building influence or creating community around them, increasing the chances of their customers, their prospective customers and partners listening to them, and then creating a mix of content, not as a business, which is typically done by marketing, but as an individual, and then start having those conversations. Or it starts with engagement, right? When you then see people interacting with your content, and then you engage with them, you're increasing your chances of getting into that conversation to learn more about them as the individual, which then will tailor your approach. So, before they're in before a business or a decision-making unit is actually in a buying or a purchase journey.
Yeah. So isn't part of the issue though that people are lazy now? So when you, Andy, and you've spoken about this, when you started out, you had a car and an address book, and you went basically knocking on doors, going to the different companies within the retail estates or the business estates, saying, are you interested in this? Can I have a conversation? And it was all about relationship, and it's quite labor intensive to do that, but ultimately you got to meet the people and you get to forge relationships. Now people want to press a button and have a never-ending list of quality leads, a constant stream of opportunities of your ideal customer, and all of that garbage because people are not prepared to put in the work.
Well, I think it comes back to revenue enablement, doesn't it? Really, it's a lot of these technologies that are theoretically making people more efficient and actually giving more visibility to their employers about what the hell's going on, because everyone likes a metric and everyone likes to be able to go, okay, press this button, the graph comes out, and let's be honest, it's a rag graph normally. If it's more green than it is amber and there's no red, we all feel kind of great. None of those technologies have actually solved the problem about making sales more, I'm trying to pick the right word, more successful. The close rates haven't gone up. In fact, actually, they've probably gone down because of our over-reliance on it. And what it keeps coming back to is there's nothing wrong with these technologies. Everybody who makes them is actually very well-intentioned. However, it's not about the technology. It's about what the human being does with it.
Always has been, yeah.
And actually, I ran an exercise again with the MBA students yesterday with Dr. Jeremy Node, and we're looking at, they're doing a module called Leading Sales Organizations. So, basically preparing for how do I go out and potentially lead a sales organization. And we introduced something additional to it, which was, we want to take you through AI. So we posed one question to them and said, we just want you to use AI, chat, GDP or whatever, or GPT or whatever you want. And here's the question. How can AI improve the sales processes of Lind? Because this is where Jeremy's head of sales enablement. And that's it, and send it to me. And 17 of them have sent it to me. And I spent at 4 o'clock this morning trying to find the right software to analyze the responses. And the majority of the analytics so far, 86% similarity in what has been used. Now, the idea being is if you just use AI, and you don't know how to use it, you're just going to look like everybody else. It's the same as using Salesforce.com. You're just going to look like everybody else. But if you then investigate it and then do something different as a human being with it, it'll be interesting, which is the second part of the exercise. How does it go down from 86% similarity to potentially 50%? So you've used it to generate and speed up, but actually you've used your humanity and quizzing of it and riffed with it to be able to pull out something that gives you that differentiation, because actually customers are going to use these technologies. They're going to go out for an RFP, and they're going to use plagiarism technologies.
Yeah, but hold on. Let's take a step back from that. So why are you going to use AI? You're going to use AI because you don't want to put in the work to do the actual work yourself. You want to get a bot to do the work for you. And
well, not always.
Well, no, but there's a lot of the case, isn't it? You know, the reason you use it is to try to scale your efforts. And, you know, Alex, better than anyone does, that one of the things that we say to people is that if you want to be successful in this space, in modern digital selling, the first challenge you have to overcome is you have to look different from everyone else. Because if you don't, it doesn't matter who people pick. I'll pick you or Tim or Andy, it doesn't matter, you're all the same. So actually you need to lead with the differentiators that you have, normally who you are, and you need to build a relationship, not a commercial relationship, a relationship. You know, we need to chat, we need to get to know each other, because only if I've got to know you are you going to have any chance of breaking through that distrust. If I know you and like you, I'm going to A, listen when you speak, and B, believe what you say.
I think it's unfair to generalize lazyism. Is that a word?
It is now. That word.
I don't think most people are lazy.
No, but this is less about people, and Richard's nailed it here. This is not the people being lazy, because the people are run ragged, aren't they? Doing this stuff, using the tools, which are lazy tools.
Because of the pressure they're under.
Yeah, it's the business saying, right, these are the tools that you have to be able to talk to more people.
Yeah.
And actually, it's not about talking to people. It's about having meaningful conversations with people.
Yeah.
And you're scaling the wrong thing. It's like the cold calling thing. Well, Tim, we're going to get an auto dialer so you can dial 1,000 numbers a day. Well, actually, the reality is if people don't want to talk to you, that's the bit that you need to try to overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's measuring the right KPI, though, isn't it? And you know, the reality around some of these things is that Neil Rackham said this, you know, turn the frown upside down. So with the internet of everything arrived in 2000, theoretically, everything went to one end of the scale or the other, which was everything's going to be transactional, online, digital. No salesman needed. It will all be kind of like, you know, web-based, etc. And then there'll be these super complex transactions at the other side. And then there'll be nothing in the middle. That salespeople won't be needed because it will go one, because the web will provide all answers to all things. And Phil at Brother, we asked him about 2-3 years ago, you know, what keeps you awake at night as a CEO? And he went, there's not enough salespeople in the world with the skill to go in and uncover the unappreciated need. So actually, it's a smile, but the world needs a frown, and sales needs to re-inject people into that middle and go, right, this is actually your problem. I know what you think you might have diagnosed yourself with your committee, but this is actually your problem. And we should start talking about that. You might not buy from me in the end, but you know, here is the range of people. And we haven't got the skills in the sales organizations to do that. And there's a number of interesting reasons around that, is because another set of technologies have come in, which is the SaaS software-based technologies, and absorbed all of the future sellers. And that has, quite interestingly, a very, very different rhythm to sell, because actually the salesperson has to demo, and they can do it online, and that's the confidence thing. So there is this other sales rhythm that's over here that's completely sucked up all the resource that the classic sales organizations need, and that's a big issue that we've got coming down the line, which is how do we entice people into sales, show them it's a great job, and then give them the skills to go in there and create transactions with customers.
Yeah. This here from Dr. Dale Childs, this is the key point, isn't it? The thing is that when you're using the tools and the data and all of these things as the shortcutting mechanism, there's no differentiator. We've all got access to the same data. We've all got access to the same insights. And, you know, it's all about the personal relationship. So I've had, and, you know, we joke about this, the number of times you get, just bouncing this to the top of your inbox kind of emails from people.
Yeah.
So I've had an email from somebody that arrived this morning saying, "Am I off base, Adam?" And this is from a company based in America that use AI to help reduce payroll tax overhead for companies. And it says, "We recently helped a company similar to yours with a $326,570 payroll tax refund." So they're using AI to have the most enormously mistargeted outreach that it's possible to have. You know, on the wrong continent, the wrong kind of company. It's not a company that's anything like my company. It's just unbelievable.
I got one from Gartner this morning that said that they could help me with engaging with clients in a digital sales method.
I love Christopher's view here. This is a dated, quite a dated view. Christopher, what we're actually not saying is that people who use AI are lazy. What we're saying is people who are lazy in using AI are going to actually get made unemployed by those people who are really good at it. That's, I think, the crux of the argument. We're not causing people who use technology lazy. Actually, I would call people who use technology and don't get supported in it actually entrapped. Because they are being driven to a set of performance indicators that are pathetic, really.
But that's the business trying to use technology to scale the wrong parts. And that's always the challenge, isn't it? The answer is just to send more emails. No, it isn't. That's not the answer. The answer is to send better emails to the right people.
Yeah, and to Andy's point, the SaaS industry almost sucking the life out of what sales stands for. They're so focused on those activities. They're so focused on doing demos. Most people don't want a demo. They want a solution to their problem.
Yeah, it's classic, isn't it? No one wants a 3mm drill. They want a 3mm hole.
Yeah.
Well, they want a picture hung on the wall.
Yeah, and I think these are some of these great comments. I'd say here, Chris Gunn's put up in here, comfort, I think, is the key word. I think enjoyment's the key word. If people don't enjoy selling and connecting with customers and doing all of the things that are great about it, I'm not disagreeing that you need to be comfortable, but I think enjoyment's at the core of it. Do you actually want to get up and speak to lots of people every day, find out what makes them tick, find out what their business problems are, and actually find out whether your solution can fit or not? And you win and lose, and that's absolutely great, but you enjoy the whole thing.
Yeah. It drives you to have the next one.
Yeah, and I actually, throughout my career, I got more and more miserable the more I was promoted. Because you don't actually share the wins. And it's almost like an oscillation, isn't it, on one of those tests that you get. When you're a sales rep and you lose a deal, you feel awful about it. And okay, that's bad, but you'll get over it. But when you win a deal, you feel fantastic. You feel on top of the earth if you've done it right. But as you get more and more senior, those kind of things kind of come down. So you never feel the gutting of losing a deal, but you never feel the elation actually of winning a deal either. And you end up becoming this, I always felt it, you become this kind of like unenjoyed leader, which I don't get. And we don't support sales leaders in this way. We never talk to leaders and say, these are some of the challenges that you're going to have. You're going to have more pressure, possibly less fun. You're going to get decisions that you don't really want. How do you need to let salespeople go? Various things like that, and it's really tough.
Yeah.
Well, someone once described sales leadership to me as more shit, same size shovel.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's wise words. That wasn't the HR person recruiting you, was it?
No. It was a colleague.
Yeah, but you have a good point there, Andy. But also, and maybe we should come back to that. But I think also more and more, and I'd love to get the audience's view on this. Salespeople feel that because the expectation is so high to sell. There's this huge misalignment between expectation and reality. So when that salesperson finally gets that deal over the line, it's like, oh, well done. Next one. Come on.
And what are you and what are you forecasting this quarter?
Yeah. Resigning, probably moving to another job. Yeah, it's you're right. I mean, but this is why I think it is leadership. And I think, we've got to start challenging really senior leaders in business to go, you've got to rethink this now. Because if you don't, you're going to end up with no sales force whatsoever. So I played around with not some numbers, but it was numbers. So looking at the number of sales and marketing jobs, and even through the pandemic, the number went up. Which is odd because obviously in a global economic shift caused by whatever it is, the red pen normally comes out and goes through salespeople. But it went up. But actually last year, it dropped by 100,000. And it was like, that's really, really interesting. Why? And it's the first time the graph, I'll share it with everybody, but the first line, the graph had gone up and up and up and up and then bang off. And actually then you correspond that and ask Google, AI and everybody else, how many sales roles are open. The number of sales roles are open actually corresponds to that big drop. So in terms of the data, the thing that's now charging at us at about 100 miles an hour for the economy, not just for businesses, for the economy, is not enough people out there driving trade and revenue. And there's less and less and less and less. And I talked to Jordan, I've talked to about 6 young salespeople in the last week about how we drive EPN. And all of them said, God, I wish I'd known about the EPN before. I wish I'd had the support to understand, A, how great sales can be, and B, how I get into it and how I get supported through that process.
Yeah. And EPN being the Emerging Professionals Network that you're running.
Not enterprise performance management then.
Say again, sorry?
Not enterprise performance management.
No. I like it though, but we're not going to go there yet.
How long? I know we've only got a few minutes left, and there seems to be quite a few comments coming through.
Great comments.
Yeah,
really great comments.
But how long should a sales leader have? I hear this VP of sales. Lifespan is 18 months. For the most part, a business is hiring a VP of sales not just to replace someone, but to actually transform something. Or there's a problem, sales are declining. Do you guys have a view on how long is long enough for a VP of sales to actually have an impact? And you're reading the comments.
I think a lot of the challenge that people face, particularly if they're going into a senior role, is that the role is often very prescriptive, isn't it? This is the sales process we're expecting you to drive value out of. So, to use Tim and his same size shovel thing, it's like, I want you to dig a hole and here's a teaspoon to be able to do it. And that's the toolkit that you have available. Yeah. And I want you to dig the hole more quickly than the last person.
Yeah.
And actually, if you're putting anybody in a role which is performance dependent rather than just role filling or executing on somebody else's wishes, you have to say to them, what do you need to make this role a success? And I know that within large organizations, that's increasingly difficult to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And then here comes the reliance on technology. Well, this platform is going to help us do this, as opposed to where's the skills gap in the people?
Yeah, and it's skill, knowledge, and behavior, isn't it? Knowledge, skill, and behavior, KSBs. And we don't look at that, and that's back almost full circle to we're into revenue enablement, not people enablement.
That's a really good comment, isn't it?
Yeah.
That CMO is 4 years, so 2.5 times as long as a VP of sales. So why is there such a big disparity? And how come also when I look out across my network of connections, there are a huge number of salespeople that are floating around looking for a role. There are a huge number of open roles, apparently. What's going on here? Why are there so many people that can't find a job and so many jobs that can't find people?
It's interesting. I think we're merging two slightly different issues. I think people are leaving sales roles and can find jobs quite easily in other places, and we're not filling the sales roles that are open because of that fact. So I think if you look at what the pandemic did, it forced people to evaluate, do they want to do that, Rob? If I'm 55 right now, I can actually take a different path and go and do something else and not have to do all this stuff and take a lifestyle decision.
Yeah, but you're not 55 yet, Andy. You've got a long way to go yet, mate. So it's fine. You've got plenty of time. Anyway, we are at time. But what I would like to say is that maybe next week we can discuss this.
I was just,
that's a fantastic, fantastic question that's worth exploring. Yeah. Because actually, I mean, Tim and Alex and I, who work together a lot of the time, we've seen this as a major shift in terms of the people that we're engaging with within organizations. So that will be an interesting thing to explore. So thank you, panel. Thank you, everybody in the audience. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic questions this week. Really interesting. And I love the fact that we had a couple of challenges from the audience as well, because this is about a debate, and I think all of us on the panel change my mind, prove me wrong on these things, because this is about an education. We're all finding our way in this world. So thank you all very much indeed. See you all next week. And until then, goodbye from SalesTV.